Hello. This morning I want to do a little video on the G Center. Somebody wrote and said, could you please talk about this center? And so in answer, I really, first of all, want to come back to the questioner to identify what it is she has activated, but we're going to do this just for me with my chart. So I have design Mercury. Wait, I don't want to kick that on the floor. There. Sorry. So I have design Mercury 10 line 6. That's in definition with the 57, also line 6. Now design Mercury, we want to say, well, that is an interesting one. It's always Mercury stays close to the sun. It can't get that far away. All right, so I also have personality Venus in 25, also line 6. And line 6 is really disadvantaged. Let's see. And then I have 1 line 4, and that's a very big deal. So we could talk about that maybe later. At any rate, what I would say is when we start looking at a chart, we want to understand what that center might represent, how we might know that center, how we might feel it. And so I'm going to go back to something that maybe you know, maybe you don't, but the G center, I do not spell it G like Ra did. He described to us early on that some things he heard and some things he saw. And the G center, he identified the sound, and therefore he did the G as a letter, and the first letter in George. So you know that what I did in my long study of the I Ching was that I came to this terminology that totally identified the G center as a connection between us and the greater cosmos. So the Chinese start off with the Wu Ji, that's W-J-I, and therefore I think it's a way better spelling, J-I-G. Okay, so now we're in the Chinese thinking of that connection to the cosmos. So now we want to take a look at what that might mean. So, you know, I don't know what channels you have. I know what channels that affect me or gates. But we want to look at the center just as a classic. We know, for example, that this is a center that relates to identity. It's yellow in the chart. It's a diamond shape. It has 8 equidistant activations. So those gates are exactly half of 45 degrees. What is that? Maybe 45 degrees. And so we have this starting point with hexagram 1. In my world, I think, are you kidding? We start with 1, not 25 because it's Aries. No, we start with 1 because it's the first. And so the G Center one, this is an activation that I have. It's called the creative. And in my activation, it's line 4. And I think this is so pertinent. Now, I don't know your chart. I know my chart. And what you get is to identify how your life works. It's about identity, and that's the first place. It's about our connection to the cosmos. It is also related to love and how you know what love is, what love might represent to you. So the G Center gives us our education on love. So let's see now. I was already saying I have 194, and hexagram 1, the creative, it is using dragons as the symbolic metaphor for the creative energy. Now, maybe you already know that the dragon is the only one of the Chinese zodiac that is a mythological creature and not an actual creature. But anyway, the dragon in line 4 flies too high and then dives into the water. And even though brilliant, can fly high, all that, it is not recognized. Line 5, then the one gets the chance to be prideful and together and surviving. But in line 4, I think this is really so true for me, that I can be smart, creative, whatever, but I am not easily recognized for that. And it is a deep part of my identity that I always get this, that people say, oh, you're creative, blah, blah. But, push comes to shove, and I'm so obscure that people credit themselves. Oh, I thought of this first. And really, I look at the human design system world, and I think a lot of people use my work and don't credit me. This happened kind of recently, maybe a month ago, that this woman who is the big hoo-ha for Austria called me, and she and I were having a talk, and I said, but the types are deeply flawed. And so then I said, the one that I hate the worst is about reflectors. So then I went, blah, blah, just describe my view. And then I just am telling you about not getting credit, other people doing my work. So this woman answers me, oh, that's normal. That's the way it's always been. No, it wasn't. Come on. I was there the whole time. And what I came up with was not at all what people who have a reflector type end up thinking, that they have to watch the moon 28 days and go through blah blah. That's their strategy. So I am telling this woman about how I approach it, and she says, oh, that's what we all do. Now, to me, since I dealt with numerous people who asked me questions, I really felt like that was a very good example of other people recognizing my work, it's so easy to assimilate. And then you never have to give credit backwards. No, never. Okay, I also have the 25, and as I said, I have line 6. This is a very disadvantaged line, just to say. Now, in this connection, the 25 looks at the heart center. That means that the heart center, gate 51, is a conditioning gate for me, a very big deal. So now I look at the G center. These different things are the lessons that I get. Like, I get conditioned by the 51. Oh, what's this shock? And here in my world, I can recognize heart center conditioning without a mistake ever. I mean, it is so obvious to me how that feels. Anyway, so here we are looking at my 3 gates. The definition to the G is connected to the spleen, and spleen is about body well-being, and, clearly this isn't something that I ended up with. So, Bettina, at one point, we were doing I Ching. She says, you will not get healthy till you work out this issue with your own body. So, I don't know. I love Bettina, but the assumption that it's because I have to somehow identify well-being differently. Let's review the connection there, the G connection, love, higher self, the God in us, the Buddha in us, connects here to the spleen center, body well-being. And then I would say, Hal asked me this question at one point, what do you think that 5710 is all about? And so we get to put our keywords. We have 57, spleen, and spleen in that gate. It is called wind, and this is the wind doubled. It is 57 wind over wind, and connecting to the 10, line 6. In my world, I would say that in my youth, I absolutely identified with my body. Oh, my body is so great, so sexy, so healthy, so cute. I'm a dancer, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm good, good, good. And so this was view 1. And then what happened as I got more limited in my mobility, I would recognize that the next thing that I knew about this identity to well-being was that, A, I couldn't control it, and B, that the teaching of the body breaking down, that's what my experience was. I got to learn that, and that got to be a different identity. And so my identity shifted. So in that shift, I ended up having to reclaim my well-being in some way that was, at the very least, the sort of good attitude. Now, later, it would evolve that I would understand my spirit, G center, my spirit embodied that this channel actually, that's a very easy putting together the keywords for the hexagrams. So spirit, G, embodied, spleen, and here we see that I recognize that the body is our temporary shelter, my spirit or my soul. This is way deeper than a limitation because of a health issue. So now I would say, I don't know what your channels are. So let's assume that you have the 10 to the 20. Now the 20 in the throat is an expression gate. And the 10, so the identity communicating, the contemplation, that's the name of hexagram 20, then you could say this is to contemplate the spirit. If, on the other hand, you have 31 in the throat, gate of influence connecting to the 7 in the G, then you would say, the old keyword does fit the leadership qualities. So the identity of the 7 as being the leader of the group is something that we would start with. And 31 being influence is a kind of description in the book, the I Ching. It is described as young love and developing into a love affair and having influence. So then we come to my hexagram 1 that connects to the throat gate 8. And now remember that if you are looking at no motor involved, then the 8 in this case is expressing. What does it express? It expresses the admiration of the 1, and therefore its job is to help the 1 come out into the market. Then we would have 1333, and 33 is retreat. It connects to the 13, and a big deal for me because I use the astrology signs. 13 is mid Aquarius. So this is the identity of the humanitarian that is the expression here of retreat. So it pulls back. And then the next one would be 45, connecting to the heart center 21. We can already say that that is a big deal. And we've left the G, I think, right there. Then we have the 25, we already talked, 51. Then going to the next 3 that go 46 to 29 and 2 to 14 and 15 to 5, that each of those is a different lesson. And so what you're trying to do is identify with something about that hexagram lesson, whatever it happens to be, for something that takes place in your life. And so now we come to the sacral center connecting to the G. That's also the 34 that could connect to the 10. And it is quite important for you to understand that the connection to the other center is going to tell you about how the G center hexagram might work. So 34 connecting to the 10. We already talked about 10, but now here it's connected to power. So we want to understand the sacral center. Anyway, then 1057, which I already have talked about. I hope this gets you started a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off and upload this thing. This is quite a challenge. I got a lot to learn to get that together. Anyway, I hope that you're having a great day, and thank you for writing and looking at the last video. So